Okay, so today we'll be discussing about sorting conditions, right? So I think all of you already know how to sort an array and stuff, so we would not be directly talking about like sorting a trivial array and all, but how do you use sorting conditions to solve different problems? One of the variant that we talked about was in the first STL session. That was on, like, there was a card which has AI and BI. In which order you should take the card so that it's most beneficial for you, right? So we'll be talking about problems similar to that today. So let's start with the first problem. Let's say you're given two vectors of dimension n. Okay, there is a n dimensional vectors given to you, two vectors a and b. Okay. So these are two vectors that are given to you, right? There are a1, a2, a3, so on up to an. Right? And similarly, there would be like b1, b2, b3 up to bn. Okay? Both are of same dimensions. Now you want to take dot product of them. You're going to take dot product. However, what you are allowed to do is you can permute both the vectors, and after that you can take dot product. Like, you are allowed to permute the vectors first and then you can take dot product. Okay. So finally, let's suppose after taking the dot product you get a value x. Okay. So you have to, let's say, maximize the value of x. Okay. So how would you like arrange the vectors so that you get the maximum dot product of the two vectors, right? And when I say dot product, it's basically the sum of, once you like permute them, it will become the product of ai and bi summed over I equal to 1 to n. So this is the dot product. There will be, let's say there are only positive numbers. Canvas says sort both and multiply. Okay. Anything else? Any other ideas? So let's take an example. Let's suppose you are given 1, 3, and let's say 4, 2. So if you directly take it, so you can permute both the arrays, right? That's given to you. Like, you can so basically these are like sets. They are not ordered. You can create an order of size n, any order of the size n out of those. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's all. Like, you just have to sort them and multiply. So now increasing and decreasing doesn't matter. Like, if you do same for both of them, it's correct. Why? Because like it's a dot product, right? So it's going to finally get summed up. So like if ai and bi happen to be over here or they happen to be at the end, it doesn't matter, right? So it's just which bi you pair with ai, right? So when I say I trying to reorder the arrays in both of them, I actually am really thinking about, let's fix one of them and let's try to permute the other, right? Because every possible answer you can get by permuting both of them, you can get by just permuting one of them as well, right? So over here, this is a common observation that you can think is, okay, let's sort both of them, and then if you take a dot product, it might be maximum. So now if let's say I ask you how to prove this particular statement, like, why is this gonna work? So how do we prove that? Okay, let's say if we sort them and we multiply, we are always going to get like the maximum number. So like, it seems correct, but why? And it's correct, in fact, like, it's not wrong, it's correct, but why? So in such problems, when you're trying to think about the logic, okay, bigger into bigger into bigger, yeah, that's the intuition, right? That's why we are doing, like, if I would have given you this particular problem, you would have not even like proved it first. You would have just like done this and you would have submitted it, right? Like, that's the first thing that you might have done, because it comes out of intuition. Okay, bigger, if you just multiply bigger things together, it gets bigger, right? But let's say when I ask you to prove this, so in such kind of proofs, there is a technique called exchange argument, which I quickly told the name in the last session, but we'll be discussing that today. Okay. So in proving such properties of numbers, we use the technique of exchange arguments. Okay. Now let's talk about what this exchange argument actually means. Okay. So now let's suppose there is like this sequence and there is this AI and there is other sequence and there is this AJ. Okay. Like this is the A sequence. Okay. There are other numbers as well. And let's say there is similarly like BI and BJ like this. Okay. So let's this be the condition currently is like this is like one of the permutations that we're talking about. Okay. Let's say this is one of the permutation. Let's talk about another permutation of B. Okay. Which is B of J, B of I. Okay. We are just like taking this two over here and this two over here, right? Now, first observation in this particular problem was that permuting both of them doesn't make sense. So we can like fix any order of one of them and we can like change the order of the other to get this dot product, right? Because this dot product is like a summation over terms. So it's like which element gets paired which is mattering. We are like not going to look into like, okay, what is their actual ordering in the sequence, right? So in whatever order we like permute A, after that, if we try to permute B, we can get all possible answers. So let's say we fix a permutation of A. So let's say we take the case where A is in a sorted order. Okay. So if A is in a sorted order, we can say that A of I is less than A of J. Okay. Let's say less than equal to, right? This would hold true if you are like sorting A. Okay. And once we have sorted A, we will try to prove that okay, sorting B is actually also optimal. Okay. So now what exchange argument tells that, let's say you are taking B of I and B of J in these two places and B of I occurs before B of J. Now B of I and B of J when swapped should produce less optimal answer. Then only B of I is better to be in this place, right? Let's suppose if instead of this array, if we had this array and this would have given us a bigger dot product, then this is not optimal, right? So let's suppose this is optimal. This is my correct answer. Okay, this is my correct answer. And if I then swap these two values, this should be less than equal to optimal, right? If I say that this is my optimal answer, if this is my optimal answer, like the best answer that I can create, then if I swap two values, this should be less than equal to optimal, right? So in such greedy problems, if you can prove that for any two pairs, if we swap them, the result is always less than equal to optimal, irrespective of where these two pairs are, then we can say that okay, whatever order we have, even if we swap, we are getting something not optimal. So that's the best optimal we can do. So this is the like argument that we will try to make. Okay. So let's suppose we are multiplying these two values. Okay. A of I and B of I plus A of J multiplied by B of J, right? This is like when we take dot product between these two, this is the value, right? If we take dot product between these two, the value would be A of I, B of J plus B of I, A of J, right? Yep. Makes sense? Now we say that this has to be optimal, right? We know that this is optimal. So this value, like this is optimal value, and this has to be less than equal to optimal, right? So now we can write that this value is less than equal to this value. Okay. So A of I, B of I plus A of J, B of J minus is less than equal to A of I, B of J plus A of J, B of I. Okay. So we are just like stating the obvious, like if this swap is making us like worse, then this is optimal, right? And we are trying to find the condition between B of I and B of J so that this is optimal, and even if we like swap, this is like less than optimal, so that this we can say that okay, this is the best we can do. Okay, so this is what we are trying to do. So in that case, this should hold, and from that we are getting this expression over here. Okay, now we will try to write this as A of I we take this term over, we take this term out over here, a of I minus a of I in bracket b of I minus b of j. Okay, I'm just like taking this to this side, so this becomes negative, and then I'm taking a of I common. Okay, and then I'm taking this on this side as well, and I'm just like taking a of j common. Okay, b of j minus b of I, okay, is less than equal to 0, right? This expression holds, and we can also write this in this format that, okay, a of I minus a of j. So I'm taking a minus over here, and I'm making this plus and this minus. I hope this makes sense to all, right? That I'm just taking a minus out of it, and I'm making this particular symbol over here minus. Okay, and that would make my expression a of I minus a of j multiplied by b of I minus b of j, because over here as well it's b of I minus b of j. Over here itself it's also b of I minus b of j, and this is less than equal to 0, right? So now two terms less than equal to 0. Now based on our like ordering of a that we assume that a of I and j, a of the a array is sorted, right? Because we can take any one of them. So we took something that would help us in proving this. Okay, so we assume this is true, right? So this is going to be let's say this is going to be negative, right? This is going to be like less than equal to 0, right? Now let's say, okay, this symbol has to be, yeah, this has to be greater than equal to, right? I wrote this one as first, right? So this one was optimal, so optimal should be greater than, yeah, right, that's correct. This should be greater than equal to, right? Because optimal should be greater than equal to this, right? This is less than equal to, like optimal should be greater than equal to this, right? And so this would have been equal to, like, just changing the signs at all places just like that. Okay, this would have been equal to greater than equal to, okay, and with this expression we can say that, okay, this is less than equal to 0. So now I say that terms are positive, so if this is less than equal to 0, then this also has to be less than equal to 0, right? Then only this can be true in all particular cases. This has to be true. So to make this true, we will make this particular term less than equal to 0, or we will make b of I less than equal to b of j, right? And which says that, okay, my array is actually, b array is also sorted. Like if I happens to be before j, then b of I also has to be less than equal to j in order to this condition to hold. So if I for every possible interaction between two elements I and j, if I have to like follow this particular condition, like if I say that, okay, in an array I is less than j, and for that b of I is less than equal to j, this basically means that b array is sorted. Okay, make sense? Like if these two conditions hold, that means we are saying that b array is sorted. Okay, so if we assume that this to be optimal, the condition that it should hold is the b array should be sorted. So that's how we prove that, okay, let's say this is, if a is sorted, then the best optimal b that we can create is, you have to sort it. And the way we took is like take any like element that is quite independent, like we have to pair elements, right? So we took two pairs and we tried to exchange the values, and we say that, okay, by exchanging we should do worse in order this to be optimal. In order to be this to be optimal, we have to like do worse in the other case. That's why this is optimal, right? So in that sense we can say that, okay, this is going to be the best one, and from that we can derive a condition. Okay, this, if we follow this condition, then any exchange is going to give us only worse, and with that we can prove that, okay, this will work. So I'm not going into exact very details of the proof, but like this is how you should be like approaching any problem where you have to like prove, okay, this ordering works. Okay, why this ordering works? Just write an expression and derive to a part where you can, like, let's say, okay, look into this term where, okay, b of I minus b of j, you can derive this particular term, and once you see this, you know that I have to sort the array, right? So this would have been like a formal way to go to this problem. Like if you see this problem, okay, I want to like solve it, this is like the way you can go into, but like this is like quite intuitive to look into that. Okay, sorting will work because bigger multiplied by bigger is bigger, right? That's the intuition. Okay. So for this was simple, but I hope you got this idea, right? So for any question, if you have to prove that, like, what is the ordering of the, like, what is the ordering that will work, just swap the elements and make it works, like make it less than equal to this particular value, the optimal value. So by that you can get a condition on what should be the ordering of the elements, right? So this idea is called exchange argument, and this is used to prove a lot of greedy techniques, to be honest, but like this is also like a sorting condition detection idea as well. Okay. Okay. So similarly, like on that day as well, we took a problem where we had AI and BI. Like there was a card and there was like AJ and BJ. So if I took the first card, like you had to take a card and the first player would have got AI points, and the second player, if the second player takes that card, you take BI points and we take chances. That was the problem. So if you remember, if we take this first card, we get AI points and my opponent takes BI points. So this was the score, and this has to be greater than, like, if if my opponent takes this particular card, that if I take this card A of J minus B of I. So from this as well we can derive that particular condition which we like took on last day, right? So that was also like in a way exchange argument only. Okay. Sorry, B of J plus A of J, right? Make sense? So this is the problem that we discussed on the last, like in the STL session, but this was the idea of exchange argument only. Okay. So now let's talk about another problem. Okay. So let's say you are giving a contest on some platform, okay, and that platform contains, let's say, n problems. Okay, there is a platform on which there is a contest and it contains n problems, and it has a system similar to Codeforces. And by system similar to Codeforces, I mean to say that every problem has got a, let's say, score. Okay, so if you solve that particular problem, you get a score, but that score starts decaying. Okay, so in problem in Codeforces platform, what happens is that if you submit a problem later, you get less score than the total score, right? Like the amount of time with time spending on the score as well starts decreasing for the reward, like when you solve it. Okay, so there is like a decay. Okay, so let's say I say that, okay, let's say there was an initial score of SI for this particular problem, and with every second that passes, its score decreases by DI, right? So if I talk about, let's say, what is the score of this particular problem after DI, after, let's suppose, T amount has passed, so that would be like S minus T times DI, right? This would be the score. And let's say in this hypothetical contest, the score can also go up to negative. Okay, like if you take too much time, then if you solve it, you will get a negative score. Okay, make sense? Now, let's say you also have, let's suppose, now this is the hypothetical part that's going to come. So this is like a Codeforces contest setting only. Now let's suppose you also know the time you would need to solve the ith problem. Okay, let's suppose you know that if I start solving this problem now, it will take me ti seconds to solve this problem, and then only I will be able to like move to some other problem. And let's suppose if you start a problem, you will have to complete it and then only you can move to some other problem. Okay, you can take any other problem. Okay, now given these information, you would like to order the problem such that the final score you make is maximum. Okay, so the problem is find the order in which you should solve to get maximum score. Okay, and you have to solve all the n problems, but you can like change the orderings if you want to. Okay, so it's completely up to you in which order you want to solve this particular problem. Like you want to solve the first problem first, or you want to solve the second problem first, so on. So it's completely up to you. And with every problem score given, its decay rate given, and its time given, you need to find the order in which you should solve the problems to get the maximum score at the end, okay, after solving n problems. It might be negative because like there is a decay, and I said that the score can become negative if like you take too much time, but still you want to make it maximum. Like even out of all the negatives, you might try to make it as much positive, like as much like less negative as possible, right? So find out the maximum score you can make. Try to think about this problem for a minute. Okay, so Balakrishna has an idea that multiply ti and di, and okay, Hmm. No, like for every problem you know how much time it will take. uh, I'm not like for so for every problem its decay and its time is fixed. So every problem, there are n problems in which each of them has fixed si, di and ti. Okay, so there are n such objects. You have to order them in such a way that if you start taking things, you will get like the maximum score. So let me give you like a quick example. Second is ti, di. No, this is quite, no, this is not the way to go. No, 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 no. This is not the correct condition.
Can I?
Yeah,
Say?
sure.
Yeah, so if we have two elements I and j, two, so they will have ti and di and tj and dj with them.
Yeah, yeah.
So we will compute ti dj and tj di, these two things.
Okay.
And whosoever ti dj, so whosoever product is less. So if ti dj is less, so we will do I first, then j.
Okay. Yeah, that's the ordering possible. Yeah. Okay. So we'll be deriving it anyways. Like this is one of the ideas. Any other ideas? So I think uh so Pranjal, I think it's not like ti and di's are not like separate vectors, so you don't need to like do it like that. Okay, so these are like elements for a particular element, and you need to order them. Okay. Hmm. Nice. Yeah, that's the same condition I think even Sashi was speaking about. Okay. Anyone else would like to try? So the max score solved by max di by di is written equal to t. Okay. Yep. So I think all of you, like if you wrote the expression, you would have derived, you would have come to this expression only. So let's quickly look into how we can do this particular problem. That you, let's suppose like you do a lot of things, then this is the ith element. So you take the ith element and then you do a lot of things and then you take a jth element. Okay. And then let's suppose in between these elements, like there is a time taken by these elements is t. Okay. And something like this. Okay, so this is the ordering. So over here, let's suppose there is like a t dash which happens first, and then you take the ith element, and then a work of t happens, and then like the jobs you take, the sum of them, their time is t, and then this j works happens, and then like rest of the things happen, right? Let's call this. So we don't care about these things, anyways. So now we will try to swap the values of I and j and see what is the change in the like the value that we are getting, like what is the change in the value. Okay, so there might be in like the score that you finally get is also influenced by the terms that are present over here, right, over these terms, but they would be same in both of them, right? Like the change in things would be same in both of them, because for these elements, okay, I'm going to explain this thing once more. So for these elements, okay, for these elements and these elements, so the things are going to remain the same, right? So these elements are going to remain the same. Now for these elements things might change. Okay, for these elements things might change. Why? Because if you note this, that if you change j to this place and I to this place, the time at which you reach at these things will change. Make sense? So making an argument with this setting is difficult. Okay, so here we will like change the argument a bit. We will look into only two neighboring elements. Let's suppose first you like do the ith job and then you do the jth job. Okay, and then you like over here you do a jth job and then you do a ith job and then you do the rest of the job. So what we assume is like these two elements are neighbors in the order that we are going to take, and in that particular order like it's always t dash will remain the same. Okay, so for these things like you are only changing the elements after it, right? So for all of them the order remains the same. So the score minus decay times at whatever time they were happening at, these are same up to these elements, right? So these are not going to change for all of the individual elements. Okay, similarly for these ones, because like total time taken up to these elements are same. So after that this only depends upon the score and time, right? So you reach these elements at the same time. Okay, so now let's talk about just two pairs which are like in neighbors, and can we swap these two values and do something better than the original one? So let's assume that this is optimal and this is like less than optimal, and then we will say that okay, I should appear j only when the value of this is less than this. So now this part of argument of first and last will hold over here as well, like these two would be same. You can say that these two would be same, and only the change will happen between these elements, right? So let's try to note these changes down. So this would be something like let's say let's suppose you took some time t, some constant time t. So for this particular like optimal expression, the value would be, let's suppose the score over here is some x dash. Okay, x dash plus t times ith items. So for the ith item, the decay would be equal to t times di, right? Because you reach the ith item at t. Okay, so that much time has already been elapsed. So you have score of I minus t times d of I for the ith item plus s of j minus t plus t of I times d of j, right? Because for this the time spent up to before you start this particular problem is equal to time t plus the time of I, right? This expression plus I'm writing over here itself plus some, let's take these scores as x. Okay, the contribution of these scores as x. Now these are not going to change anyway, so we just keep these two things same in the second option as well. So this x plus x dash is going to remain the same for these two terms. Okay, and only things that will change will happen in these two elements. So we can say that okay, this would be sj minus t times di, sorry, dj, plus si minus t plus s1 si plus t times, because t plus s1 si. So si is not time, right? Like there is ti time given to each of them. So like the tuple is something like this: si is score, di is decay, and ti is time. Yeah, ti plus t plus t of I times dj. So which term are
I'm
you
saying
talking about?
that you. So I'm taking that, telling that you have written si minus t di. So t plus ti should be, because the score is given after I has finished.
Okay, okay, yeah. T plus Ti, and okay, yeah, let's take this. Yeah, so this would be Ti plus Tj times Dj, right? This is going to be there. Yep, makes sense. So we'll have to also change this part a bit. This would be T. So this would be, sorry, this would be D of I, and this would be D of J. Yeah. So this would be T plus T of J times D of J plus S of I plus T plus T of I plus T of J times D of I, right? Now this has to be bigger than this, right? This has to be greater, this has to be greater than equal to this. So now when we will write this in expression from both the sides, this is going to get cancelled off. Okay, now there is this Si plus Sj term which is going to get cancelled out from both the sides because there is like less than equal to between these two terms. So this is like expression 1 and expression 2. So we will write expression 1 greater than equal to expression 2, but these are there on both the sides, so anyways they are going to get cancelled. Okay, so if we then write the expression, this would nothing, this would be, so let's cancel one more term. There is this di times t and di times t over here, so we will cancel off these t's from this. Okay, similarly dj plus t and dj plus t is over here, so we will cancel these t's. Okay, now there is this dj plus tj, and over here we have dj plus tj, so we will cancel these two terms. Okay, there is this di times t of I over here, and there is this d of I times t of I. Okay, yeah, there is this should be minus. Yeah, so di times t of I, and there is di times t of I, so this t of I will get cancelled, right? So I'm just opening it up and just cancelling terms so that I don't have to write all the terms again. So if we see that what we are left with is this is not there, this is not there, this is not there, this is not there, only this dj times t of I remains, right, on the first hand side. So dj times t of I. Okay, and this has to be greater than t of j times d of I, right? So only these two terms, and this is the condition that should hold. Okay,
You forgot the negative sign in this.
Just a second.
Ti
Yeah,
dj
yeah,
is
yeah,
negative.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, true. So over here we can, like, we will have to take this, right? Okay, yeah. So over here we have negative t of I and, sorry, negative t of j times t of I. So we will take that to another side, other side, and we will take this negative to the other side. So this sign will change basically, right? And with that we will have like an expression of, so let's try to keep for the same type of I, it should be like, let's try to keep them in the same side. So it will be t of I divided by d of I less than equal to t of j divided by d of j, right? Make sense? So this is the condition that we will arrive up to, and in fact, like, as you can see that this is the thing that we will be sorting the array with respect to, like, so we will take these elements in an array and we will sort the elements by this particular value. Okay, like for the ith value, its priority is something like this particular value, and we will sort it in decreasing order, and like the one with has smaller value will appear first. So you can like take, like, reciprocate this and like change the signs and all. So these are possible to be done, and like with that you can get the other forms that people wrote in the chat, but I think these are all similar. Okay, so we will sort things by this expression. So like, it's not about the answer to be precise, it's about the steps that we did. So like, so this is the whole idea that you should be like thinking about, like when you see that okay, a problem might be solved by some sorting algorithm, like there is some optimal ordering and you have to find the optimal ordering among the, like, in which you have to perform the tasks. So what you can do is you can like take some ordering and say that okay, it's optimal, now swap it and say that okay, it's not optimal, and like find the condition between those two elements, like those two elements, what's the condition. Okay, so by writing expressions and finally getting up to the final term. Okay, so most of the time you don't even need to consider like things are there before it, because most of the time the contribution for those gets cancelled off. So you can just take two elements and like see what's the condition for one of them to appear before the other. That will work in most of the problems. However, don't forget that actually we are doing this and this is getting cancelled over here. It's not like it's not there. Okay. Now when we have to like solve the problem with respect to this particular condition, let's try to like quickly look into the code for this. Okay, so there are a few things that I'd like to explain on this one. So is the Sublime visible? Yep. Okay, fine. So let's try to like, let's say code for this particular problem. So let's suppose we have a, let's say we have a struct S, like we have a struct which is, let's say with a problem, and it has three particular elements: integer, si, ti, and di, right? Like what we discussed: score, time, decay, time taken, and decay, right? And then we would like to compare these things to sort. Okay, so we would be writing a custom comparator in this particular case, where you can like take a problem A and a problem B. Okay, and you would like to compare which will come first. So in that particular case, you need to return A dot, so what was the condition? A dot T of I by D of I should be less than equal to T of J by D of J, right? Dot T of I by A of T of I should be less than equal to A dot B dot T of I. Sorry. Right. So I think we don't need this I. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to come to this soon. No worries. So this is the thing that we'll be doing. So we would be taking the inputs and we would be like taking the inputs in this integer value, and after all of these inputs are taken, we take this into an vector of prob, and then like let's suppose sort, we will call something like, so sort, we will have some vector which takes prob and which is v, and in that contains all the answer, and we will call sort of let's suppose v dot begin, v dot end, and with a custom comparator CMP into the place. Yeah, I'm coming to that. That's a deliberate mistake. Okay. Okay. So we'd be calling this particular sorting function. Okay. Now coming to the sorting function. Now, since we have declared things over here as integer, we will like when we divide the things, this is going to get like overflowed, right? So let's try to look into this. Let's quickly, let me take quickly two numbers. So for just a sec. So now we want to sort this particular array, and then let's suppose we want to print the array. Okay. Okay. So first of all, I think all of you might have noticed this by now, that this is obviously a mistake because things are integer over here, and this might like this might be like wrong, because of course this will get divided first and then it will be compared. So even if this is like less than this in floating point, this will get like typecasted to integer and it will give you a wrong answer, right? So one way is you can convert these things to float, but that's not always advisable, because like in floating point or double, the comparison is not precise, right? Even if they're very close, like there can be like some epsilon difference that might happen in between like elements. So like refrain from going to domains of floats and doubles as long as you can. Like if you have to go to that, okay, but if you don't have to convert things into longs and double, like sorry, I meant to say floats and doubles, you don't need to go into that, right? So you can write this expression in a different way in this, right? In this, okay. Just a minute. Yep. So we can cross multiply it with this one. Just a minute. Then multiply this with t. So a dot d, right? Yeah. And this will get multiplied by b dot t. So we can write it in this way. In case this gets overflowed, we need something like 1 ll. It might get overflowed, so we might need 1 ll. So let's say we take this, right? Makes sense? Is this correct? So exactly, that's the point I would like to make, that in a sorting comparison, never use equals, or if any two elements are like same, you should not return true. Okay, even if both elements are same, you should not return true. So what happens is like it tries to swap, and if you like allow them to like compare between equal elements, what will happen is they will keep on like swapping between in a cyclic loop. So it will either give you a runtime error or it will give you a TLE. So never use equals in a sorting condition. Always make it less than. If it's equal to, they will always get aligned side by side. Okay. So this is like one thing that you should be careful about. Whenever you're sorting, make sure you don't give a comparator where if it's equal, it returns 1. Okay. That is like, then the code is done. Like you would be getting the answer for sure. Okay. So I think that was the main purpose. So these are the two things. So when you are like comparing some fraction, make sure you cross multiply. And when you are like having a equals in the expression, drop that equals. Like don't need to consider that. It will get aligned like side by side itself. Okay. If you give it equals, it will give you a TLE wrong answer. Okay. So that was the whole purpose of like writing this code. Like these two things you should be careful about. Like the code would be very short in such problems, because you just have to find this condition first. So it will be like first you have to like write on a notebook and solve this, and then you will have to like use this like comparator directly. So in a lot of problems, these type of comparators, this type of sorting condition or exchange argument techniques are sometimes fused with dynamic programming, but we would be taking those like techniques later on when we like learn about dynamic programming. Okay. So like recent trends, a lot of such like sorting condition based problems are fused with like dynamic programming, and then they appear in competitions. So we would be learning those as well, but once we go into dynamic programming. I think that's all about exchange argument. So next we'd be solving, yeah, if this returns true, then A will get placed before B. Yeah, so even I personally think about these things like this, that okay, like what is the condition that A will lie before B? I need to write that condition over here. Okay, and that's it. Like it will make the array sorted in that condition, by that condition. Okay, so just think about what is the condition for A to lie before B and write that condition over here, return like its truth, and that will like sort there in that particular order. Okay, that's how even I think about it. Okay, so next let's move into one more problem. Let's say any doubts onto any of the problem that we have discussed till now, like the first vector maximization. I think this was pretty simple. Like The idea was simple, however the proof idea was not that trivial. And then like this one where you have to derive the expression. Okay, any doubts on to anyone this? Oh yeah, you can use tuple, you can use pair of pairs if you want to. Okay, you can create tuples, whichever you feel like. I personally use pairs of pairs a lot, like pair of integer comma pair of integer comma integer, something like that, to keep three values. But you can use anything. That's completely up to you. It's all equal. Like you will have to use that get zero, get one, get two operator, but that's completely up to you. Okay. Now let's talk about another problem. Let's take a scenario of a company. Okay, so a company has n employees. Okay, and for each of the employee, it has two particular values. One of it is speed of that employee, like how fast he performs the jobs, and efficiency of that employee. Like even if someone works at a very high speed, his efficiency might not be good, right? So there are two factors that like works together for anything. So these are the two metrics that even company like evaluate you on, let's say. And with these two metrics for n employees, the company wants to form a team of k people. Okay, like they try to make a like a group of k peoples to work with in a project. Okay, now they want to choose the k people in such a way so that like there is a metric that we will define just after this. There is a metric that has to be maximized. Okay, so they have a metric in place for a team of k people, for any team, let's say, and for that team you have to maximize this metric. Okay, so let's talk about what the metric is. Okay, so the metric for a team would be the minimum of speed of the team multiplied by the sum of efficiency of the team. So you can say that, okay, let's say like if like 10 people work, and if 10 people work, then the job gets done with the slowest speed, like slowest person speed, because that would become the bottleneck. Okay, so minimum of the speed multiplied by the sum of efficiency, because everyone will work at their own efficiency. Okay, so this is the metric by which they compare people, like they compare teams. Okay, and they want to form a team of k people such that this metric is maximum possible. Okay, because they want this team to be like some elite team, and they want to like complete some particular job. So now it's like up to you, like given these speed I and efficiency I values for n different employees, you need to design this k person teams. Okay, okay, so think about this. How would you solve this particular problem? That find out a k people team so that this particular metric, so min of speed is like if you take person number 1 2 3, the speed of, you take the minimum of their speeds, that's the min of speed of the team, and the sum of efficiency is like the summation of them. Okay, so find out a team such that this particular metric is maximum. Like you have to just print the maximum metric that you can make. Okay, and let's talk about constraints. So we will try to solve this for, let's say, up to 10 to the power 5. There are 10 to the power 5 employees in the company, and k can be up to from, let's say, from 1 to 10 to the power 5. Okay, so how do we do this particular? Yeah, you have to just print the maximum metrics, that's fine. If you want, like we can even print, if we want to, we can even print the answer as well, like that's also possible, but let's say we just want to print the maximum metric. Sort on speed plus efficiency. Okay, that's one idea. Any other ideas? Ti Ei is greater than Ti Tj Ej, and then select I over J. Okay. Okay. Any other ideas? Okay, that seems like a good option, because anyways in that term Ti is going to get multiplied with Ei. So this like somehow works dimensionally correct, but this is not precise. Like this is not exactly correct, because even if like that, so that person's Ti like speed is not going to get like is not going to be its own speed after it gets into the team, right? It's going to become the minimum of the team. So it's not exactly correct. Any other ideas? Speed plus efficiency is also not correct metric, because as I said, the speed will be the minimum of the team, not like the person's speed. So it will not be optimal. So I'm not going into like giving exactly like edge cases for each one of them. I can just tell that okay, it's wrong. Okay, if we have chosen k minus 1 elements and we have to choose the last one, then it should be the case. Okay, true. This is absolutely true, because if we have chosen k minus 1 elements and all of those k minus 1 elements is more efficient, like has more speed than this particular person, right? Then only this is the case, right? We have chosen the things which are there. Yeah. This is correct. So let me like tell you that in this particular problem, this is not directly like a sorting condition problem. Like you won't get a sorting condition on which you will get the complete answer. Okay, now think about this problem. Like this is purposefully kept over here, because not every problem is like you will have a sorting condition and you just put in that and you will get the answer. Okay, not every problem would be there like that. So this is not just a sorting condition for like, this is not like you have one sorting condition and you sort and then you get the answer. This is not like that. Okay, now try to think about this particular problem. Can you somehow decide on, so can this like problem be made easy if you somehow knew the minimum speed of the team somehow? Think in this direction. Like let's suppose, how do you do this in such a way that you know the minimum of the speed of the team you can form? Because once like if you know the minimum of the speed, then this is just like as like Shashi said, that like if you know the minimum of the speed, then this becomes very simple, right? Because everything else you have to just take the maximum sum, and because you know the minimum speed, then you are done, right? So you will try to maximize the sum. But the minimum, like there might be cases where you take someone's like someone's speeds get decreased a lot, but they might give you a lot of efficiency in the summation part, so you can't really decide on that directly. So we will try to iterate on every person. Okay, we will try to iterate on every person being the minimum speed of the team. So what I'm saying is we will try to iterate on every person being the slowest person in the team, and we will try to find out what is the maximum efficiency in that particular case. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's suppose, so you know the person's E of I and S of I, right? Like you know E of 1, S of 1, E of 2, S of 2, so on, E of n minus 1, S of n minus 1, E of n, S of n, right? So you know these pairs. Okay, so let's assume that we first sort it by their S values. Okay, we sort them by their S values. We can obviously do that, right? We can obviously sort the elements by their speed, just the speed. Okay, so now once we get the sorted elements, we know that if there is some S of some I over here, okay, then all of elements that are after this will be will have more speed than S of I. So if I make a team out of elements from S of I to things that are more than it, then that team will have minimum speed S of I, and like minimum speed greater than equal to S of I, and it is going to get multiplied by the elements that we choose out of these, right? Out of these, it's summation, like whichever elements we choose out of these elements from Si to n, we pick some key elements out of it, their summation multiplied by S of I. Okay, that would be the answer if we pick S of I into our answer and everything else from this side. Okay. So the one way to do this particular thing would be just like for loop for every I, find out the k top element, like k highest elements in the range E of I to E of n. Okay, after they are sorted. Okay, and if you take the k best elements, like top k elements and their summation, multiply it with S of I, because that's the minimum speed, you will get we will consider all the possible teams that you can create with minimum S of I. Okay, if we do it with all S of I possible, like if we do it with all of S of I's, then we say that all the teams that we could have created have now got considered, like it would have been considered in whichever minimum speed that team has, right? So there might be a team which contains S of 2 as the minimum, let's suppose minimum speed. Okay, so in that case we would have taken the maximum sum out of these elements from E of 2 to E of n, and out of these we pick out the k top elements, take their sum, and we multiply it with S of 2, because that is going to be the minimum speed by the expression. Is it making sense? Okay. So if we sort it by S values, the problem becomes easier. Why? Because now with S of I being like, we can now fix S of I very easily, and out of the elements that are after it, we can find out like the best solution that we can have, right? So this is how we like try to like make problems in a bit, like we can twist problems in a bit so that like it helps us to solve this problem in a better way. So or else it would have been simply solvable by in n choose k, like you can solve it in n choose k. Yeah. So we basically, no, we don't have fixed, yeah, you have fixed S of I, yeah. So now we will iterate on all possible S of I, but once we fix that S of I, we really have the choice of taking elements from E of I from E of n, because these will have more S speed than S of I, right? And we can only take things which are greater than equal to minimum, because we fixed it as minimum, right? No, I like Balakrishnan, I think there is one particular, take the largest k according to speed, no, and put their E of I in a multiset. No, that's not correct. Top k, okay, top k, largest k, and pop the last one, push. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, that's correct. So what we are doing over here, let's move into that. What Balakrishnan has written, that you will have to. So what we will do is, let's suppose there is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the speed values, and like let's suppose there is something like this is there, and you have to choose k equal to 2 elements. What we will do is, so first we will try to take these 2 elements, right? So this is obviously possible. So what we will do is we will maintain a priority queue, okay, which contains the top k elements. And we can also, we discussed this in the first STL session, that we can maintain a priority queue and a sum variable to like create a top k sum data structure, right? How many of you remember this one? That you can put in elements from this, remove elements from this, and you can maintain the sum of variables in the sum of the entities in the priority queue, right? So this is something that is maintainable. And if you're not sure about this, just make sure that you like go through the video once more. That's it was explained in that one. So we can just put the 2 E values or the efficiency values into this, right? 2 and 9, and their sum is the potential value, right? So now next what we do is, now we consider this particular range, these 3 range. So what we do is we put this 5 as well in the multiset. in the priority queue, I mean to say, right? And then we see that, okay, there are 3 elements, we can only take 2, so we remove the smallest one because we want to make the sum maximum, right? We want to maximize this. So since min speed is fixed, sum of efficiency should be maximum. So we remove 2 and we take that. And then we now consider all the teams which can be created with this and with this set. So their minimum will be equal to 2. So we will insert 1 into this, but it's not going to change anything, so it's going to remain 11. So at every step when we were over here, we know the minimum is 3 and we know the sum is 11. So we will so the current best you can do is 3 into 11, right? Minimum multiplied by the sum efficiency. When you go to this is also 2 into 11, right? Let's talk about this one. 2 into 11. When we were with just these 2 elements, it was 4 into the sum was 2 plus 9, that is 11. Okay, so sorry, this would change, right? This would not be 11 anymore. This would change to 9 plus 5, 14. Okay, so this would be 14, this would be 14, right? These are the values that you get at these instances, and you take the max of all of these things because these are the potential values that you have. So we take max of these things. So we will change this particular iterator only order n times. So this will change order n, and for each order n, you have to just insert it into priority queue and remove the highest element once. So this would be order n into log n. Okay. So how 2 into 14? So we have to choose 2 elements, right? So if the minimum is 2, we have to pick 2 elements out of these elements, right? So we can take this element and this element, right? So note that it is not fixed that we have to take this element only. So okay, I got your point that how to 14, because it's not necessary that even if this is the min, we might not take this particular case as this is this has to be taken. You can consider that as well, but I'm taking a relaxed condition. This will always be correct. Why? Because even if you have not taken this in the sum, if this speed is smaller, right? So either this sum will so when I had, let's suppose, let me explain this one. This is a good invariant thing. So when I had this one, when I had 5,9 in the set, the sum was 14, right? So let's suppose I take this new element. So this initially it was 3, let's suppose 5, and now I had 2, something. Okay. So if it is less than 5, so what happens is only, anyways, this is going to be less than anything optimal. So this is never gonna make a better thing, better than whatever we had earlier, right? Even if you take 2, 1, then 2, 5, it's not gonna make anything better, right? So the speed is strictly decreasing. So the multiplication is decreasing and the sum remained the same. So anyways, this is going to dominate over this one. So we just take the best k in the multiset. That's how we are maintaining it. Okay. And in case this was more than this one, let's suppose this was 8, in that case the sum would have changed, right? We would have inserted 8 and removed 5, and this would have increased to, let's suppose 8 plus 8, 16 to 17, right? Yeah. So in that case, this would have got updated. So even if it's not updating, yeah. So Shashi, that's also correct. You can implement it in that way. It's just that I find implementing it this way easier. That's it. It's completely up to implementation. That will also work. If you fix on elements, that's also possible. Okay. Makes sense? So sort the array by S and keep a priority queue of top k elements from the end, and iterate on all I, which can be the minimum. Okay. Is this clear to all? Can I have a +1 from everyone if this is clear, or you can ask on which part you have it. Okay. So I hope you got an idea of this. So not every problem is a sorting condition problem. You might not get a sorting condition every time, but this is purposefully set like that. You don't feel that every problem you will get a sorting condition and you can blindly put in that. Okay. So this is somewhat a greedy idea, sorting by some condition and then building something. So this is uses STL and greedy techniques. So we would be taking up similar problems when we discuss greedy algorithms again later on. Okay. So Next, we'll be talking about some debugging techniques that you can use to debug your codes. So now we'll be discussing a lot of things related to like just setting up codes and how to write codes in different styles so that you make less bugs. Okay. So when you're coding things, you should ideally be building up a checklist of what are the common bugs you personally make. Okay. So in a lot of places you would make bugs and then only you will learn that, but you should like keep a checklist in your mind. Like, you don't need to note them down, but you can keep a checklist. Okay, these are things that I make. I have seen people making like in a template only, keeping a comment at the end like check this, check this, check this if you have done this right or not. You can make that if you want to. Okay, based on what are the frequent errors that you make, so that at the time of competition you don't like you just go through it and okay see that okay I'm not making this mistake, right? Something like that. Okay. Now let's suppose you submit a code and you get a wrong answer. Okay, so what should be your like behavior in a competition or even when you are practicing? Okay, so before we move into like what should you be doing, first of all understand this, that when you're practicing things, practice it as if you are solving it in a competition or solving it in like some real setting. So the more you make your practice real to like more you make your practice real, the gap like the gap of your performance in the competition and your practice as well shortens up. Like if you're practicing in practice, like while you're practicing, let's say you're solving every problem in 10 minutes and like you're looking into editorial just coding it, so you will not be able to like make efforts in competitions and would be able to come up with a solution by thinking for around 20 or 30 minutes. Okay, so make sure you when you're practicing you keep like your mentality as if you are doing it in a competition. Okay, even if you get a wrong answer, you should not be like looking into the test cases immediately. Like in Codeforces, sometimes test cases are available which are small enough and you get your bug from the test case, but ideally you should not be immediately looking into those. Why? Because in competition you will not have that, right? You will like inculcate a bad habit of like quickly looking into solutions and quickly looking into the code, which is harmful in the long run, right? Like this is not something you're doing for just 1 or 2 days or 1-2 weeks, right? In normal courses, whatever you learn you might forget them. Like that's okay if you forget them, but you should ideally try to keep these skills for a longer time, right? So try to build these habits when you're starting out so that it helps in the long run. So there are different types of practice that you do. Both are okay. Like even we sometimes do a practice where we try to solve which does not have solutions and which are hard. We sometimes do problems where we like just like read the problem, try to think for 5 minutes and then look into solution. We also do where we go for 60 minutes. I try to switch the patterns every time, so try to do that. Okay, ideally you should be thinking for like around 50% of the time that you're taking for a problem in just thinking about it. Okay, so make sure you do this. Try to use the timer on the platform. Okay, if you want to like just to keep a track of like at least you're thinking for 20 to 30 minutes on a problem and then only you're looking into the solution. Okay, now let's suppose you write a code and you make a bug. Okay, so let's look into one particular code. So let's say I am given a array A. Okay, and I want to find the kth, like when I sort that particular array I want to get the kth element in that. Okay, let's say we are taking this one index. Okay, so k is one indexed. Okay, now this is the code. Let's suppose I write to find. So this works in nlogin. Okay, now there is a small bug in this code. Okay, so don't write on the chat if you know what the bug is. Okay, please try not to reveal it to everyone. Okay, try to. So sometimes you might write these type of codes and you might feel okay I'm not getting a correct answer, and why am I not getting a correct answer? Okay, so what to do in those scenarios? Like this is like a very small code, but still people like get, even if you have like a 20 or 30 lines of code and you're not trying to like, if you're not getting a correct answer, if you submit this on a platform, you might like, okay, what is the error in the code? How do I get that? Okay, so we will try to debug this particular code. Okay, so how do we debug a code? Okay, so for this we will write three things. Okay, first would be like the like this particular code, that is your solve. Okay, okay, so we'll be writing three things over here: a solver, like whichever solve function you want to test. Okay, a brute force solution that is correct but takes a long time, like it will take a large amount of time, and we do like it's like a brute force 2 to the power n type of solution, and a generator which will generate inputs for these type of things. Okay. So now we will change this particular function a bit. What we will do is, let's suppose we will take this array in place. Okay, so whenever you want to like now want to debug this particular scenario, let's say I will be given these particular things in a vector. Let's assume this vector, no problem in that. Okay, and we will be able to take an I plus 1. This would be equal to dot begin, and this would be okay. So now this type of code would be there. Now this will also work, like this is the same code in a vector form. Now what we will do is we will try to like take the arguments, take the inputs in the argument and like return the value that we're trying to print. Okay, that's what we would be doing. So we would be returning this. So there is one more key that was supposed to be there in the input. Okay, so now we'd be taking these two things in the argument, and k vector of integer arr. Okay, and this would be there. Assuming this will be resized automatically, we will not be taking the input, we'll be sorting array and returning it. Okay, and then let's suppose we write a brute force which solves it, but in whatever complexity possible. Okay, so let's try to write it in a brute force fashion. Before we do that, let's return the answer. Okay, so now we write brute solve. Okay, which will take the same type of arguments. So how many of you are already able to find the bug in this? Can I have a yes on the chat? I think it's pretty simple, but just yes. Okay, no revealing. Okay, okay, so it's pretty trivial for a lot of you, but let's look into the video. And so these are three things we will write, and instead of calling this solve now, we will call this generator. Okay, now let's write this brute solve. So we would be using a inbuilt function in STL. So when you have like, okay, let's say we'll be using an inbuilt function, something called, okay, so we will create like a vector temp. Okay, I'm doing this just to like stretch things a bit, but nothing fancy in this. Okay, so there are like from 1 to n, so I will go from I equal to 1 to, let's say, n, and I will push that into temp. I'm just copying those elements, like in making them 0 indexed. Okay, okay, and then I return star of kth element of temp dot begin. So if we want to find the first element, we generally return temp dot begin plus k minus 1. Okay, and we will return, and this would be temp dot end, right? There is some syntax like this. And then let's quickly call let's create a test. Okay, so we will try to create a test case similar to what is given on the platform, mostly like the files that we need. So let's try to create 1, 2, like let's see something like this: 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 5, 9. Okay. And we want to, like, let's suppose, so n for this n will be equal to 5. So this would be 0 indexed in that particular case, and k will be equal to, let's say we want to find the second element. Okay, so now next we move into like let's quickly, I'm just using a printing function. So this is not going to do anything. This is just like a printing function. And we will also print the value of what is the solve nk test gives and what the solve brute solve of nk test gives. Okay, so we'll print all these 5 values. There is some compilation error. Okay, there is nth element. The function's name is nth element, right? Okay. Okay, this should be factor of it. Okay, there is one mistake over here. This PR does not work solely. It's like a testing function that I particularly use for myself, but okay. So in this particular function, when I'm trying to find out the second element out of all these elements, when they are sorted, both of them give us 2, right? Which is correct. Even if we try to find out the third element, it tries to give out the correct value, right? Because both of them are 3. So now we would like to find out where this fails. So what we'll be doing is we would be using all possible permutations of this array to find out what is going to be the answer. Okay, so in most problems, when you are like solving a problem, you might be given like there is an n sized array and you need to do this and that. Okay, so you can create a small array of size n filling with random values. Okay, you can use rand mod, let's say some small values up to 10 mod 10. Okay, so this will generate a random value for you, and with that you can test whether both of these brute and solve brute is giving correct to you or not. And till it's not given correct value, till it's not like terminating, just keep doing it again and again. Okay, so in this case we have a permutation, so we will try to permute it in all possible permutations. Okay, so even without like all possible permutation, let's try to use a function, something called random shuffle. Okay, so there is a inbuilt function in standard library STL that is called random shuffle. Okay, so that can shuffle an array if you want to, and let's say while 1, okay, random shuffle test dot begin plus 1 test dot end. Okay, so this will random shuffle the test array. Like let's try to print the test array, what this gives. Okay, so we don't want to change this 1, right? Like this, we don't want to include this 0 in the permutation. We just like, anyway, this is 1 index array, right? So we just want to permute these elements, that's it. No specific reason for that. Okay, okay. Okay, so test needs to be declared first. Okay. In fact, like just try to write like the values of a test case, right? So there are like test case inputs given to you, like just write the inputs in some format and then try to Let's try to look into this, if this random shuffling is working or not. So it just prints out all shuffling orderings, it keeps on printing shuffle orders, right? So now we're getting a lot of test cases out of these. So what we'll do is if solve of this is not equal to the brute solve, then break. Okay, and then we will look at what the test case was when we failed, like where our solution is failing. Okay, so let's look at that. Okay, so it failed. Okay, we need to print nk as well. So if we don't know what the nk is, let's try to, like, we don't know what the nk values are, right? So the n is fixed. Let's try to permute k's as well. So let's suppose integer k will be equal to 1 plus n mod rand mod k, rand mod n. So this will give us one random value from like 1 to n, right? I hope this all of you know that if you want to like get from like some low to high, you can use this type of functions, right? Rand mod high, sorry, rand. So if you want to get a random number in between range from low to high, you can just use this function rand of rand mod low plus high minus 1, okay, plus low, or low plus this. So this will work, right? So in this way you can get a random number in this range. This is not true random, however, like this is not perfectly random, but still it works with most of the problems. For true random, if you want to, you can use things like this. So there is like a function called there is a library chrono in C++ which gives you like a true uniform integer distribution between L to R, and that works very well. And you should like, you can use these type of random generators as well if you want to. Okay. Now, once you have these things in place, now let's try to see into which test case is failing us. Okay, we want to put a semicolon over here, and then, okay, there's some more mistake. We declared nk, right? Oh, so we have to declare the k over here because we are going to print the k that failed it, right? So that's it. So in this test case, with this test case, k equal to 3 fails. So now we are done with finding a test case where it will fail. So let's try to assign it to this particular value. So let's now analyze why I'm failing. And k should be equal to 3, right? And now I know that, okay, my code fails on this. So why am I failing on this one? Let's look into these two values. Let's try to print these values individually, okay, and see what these are giving us. So we know that it fails on this. So my brute force is given me 3, but my solve is giving me 4, which is not same. So either of them is obviously wrong. So now so now we know that on this test case it's failing, right? Now we'll quickly look at this particular question, and we see that, okay, 3 should have gone, like it should be 1 2 3, right? Third element. Okay, so if you select, so in Sublime you can select lines, and like control plus slash will give you like multi-line comment. Okay, also if you want, you can like have, so if you want to type same thing twice, you can like have multi cursors as well. So I'm writing same things together, okay, in multiple places if you want to. So these things comes in handy when you're like when you're coding a lot, but you can use these things on, like, these are available on a lot of IDs. You can have a look at these. So this is not something like, this is just fancy ID. Okay. So this we don't need anymore. So we now know the test case, and we now know that my solve is actually wrong because this should be 3, because 1 2 3, so third element should be 3, but it's not giving over here. So I'm returning a of k. That means my array of k is not 3. So let's try to print my array and see why my array is not coming out to be 3. So if I print my array, we look into it, then we see that, okay, this 3 is remaining at the end. That means, okay, I have not taken 3 into my consideration of sorting. So okay, I have taken a wrong indexing over here, and I should have taken it like n+1. Okay. So, and now if I run it, I will see that, okay, now both of them gives me 3 and 3. Okay. Now let's go back to the original format over here. So let's quickly uncomment these and put in these conditions over here. Let's remove this. So we want to check whether my code is now correct or not. Is there some other case where I'm failing? So I will just run this one again, and I will see that my code is running indefinitely. It's not failing on any test case, right? So that means my code is not able to find out any test case where I'm getting a wrong answer. That means it's most probably right, right? So this is how you can even test that, okay, my code is running correctly in a lot of test case or not. Or you can also find that, okay, which case my code is actually failing on. Okay. And apart from that, you can also look into like how these things are generated. Okay. So let me quickly show you this as well. So let me like even on like even if you are doing some problem setting, if you want to like if you ever do a problem setting, like how do we create a test case, how do we create the problems that you look like solve on the platform, how are these created on like for any other platform. Okay, so like in general as well, we generally have like some like setup which is given. So we generally create, so this is something like a header file which we create to use a lot of test cases, like tree generators and other things which we use to generate test cases. Apart from that, for every particular problem that we generate, we write a generator which generates sample cases and test cases that you have. So we generate like files which you see on the OJ. Okay, so like different logic, some random number of large numbers with strings a b, some particular example problem, let's say, but generating random numbers like this. Okay, so this is how some problems works with random numbers, some problem does not work with random number. You need to generate things out of it. Okay, also the one I showed you over here is like a single, like you have a file, and in that file only you wrote 3 functions, right? You can, even if you want, you can create separate functions where you have like a code check where like you have to check this particular function, and this is particularly giving wrong in some cases. Okay, something like this. This is deliberate. Okay, and then you write a like you have a correct code. Okay, you have the correct code over here. This is solution and this is correct. Okay, so let's suppose there is a solution which is correct. Okay, like don't talk like this code is will not make sense, but okay. And there is this generator which generates test case. So what you can do is like with a Python code, you can simply like compile all these files, run a generator, run a solution, run your checker, and like you can run a code which checks all the outputs of these 3 files, right? So you can run these files, create test cases, and like find out which test case it fails on, right? So this way also, this is another way you can try 400 times and generate test cases and find out which case it's failing on. Okay, that's also one way you can check functions. But preferably use this debugging technique that, okay, once you have written the code, you can like just write functions which check then and there in the C++ itself, because you should be like having a good hands-on with C++ by now, and you should be able to write codes which just loop and generate random inputs. So just generate random input for your code and like give it to your like function that you're solving, and just check whether you are getting the same as the brute force solution or not. Okay. So this generally, like this will generate random test cases, but you can also like code in some logic that how would you like to design random test cases. That's how like not all test cases that we design on platforms are like random test cases, right? You need to design specific test cases where like different solutions will give TLE. So like there's a creativity in that side, but okay, like you have to predict which cases it will fail on and then accordingly handle those. Okay. So but still, for debugging small codes and like debugging like for at your end, generating random inputs and testing it with brute solutions should work. Okay. Make sense? So this is how you should be debugging your codes. So make this a habit, because 2 things, this will help you coding a lot, as whenever you get this particular generator code. Yeah, sure, no problem. Just a minute. So this is the way you should be coding it. Coding it. Okay. That's all. I think this is all you need to know about debugging right now. So whenever you get a code, whenever you get a problem where you like face this particular issue, you can just use this function and print things up and see where your code is failing. Okay, and just generate random inputs, check it on it. I think you, in most of the cases, you will get the case where you are failing. So keep n and k small so that you can like manually run your algorithm on it and see that okay, this step is where my code is like giving a wrong answer. So that is where something is missing in the code or something is wrong. Okay. Or else, if even if sometimes your logic is wrong, you will be able to find the test case. Okay. So like try to write these test cases, and this does not take much of time because for any input, like whichever question you have inputs, mostly it's like n and an array and some like 1-2 parameters. So just assign them random values. That's it. Okay. Okay. So you can even create this array randomly if you want to, like just append n random values. That's it. You will have a random array, and with that you can use. However, use on like practice with only those codes that you can write. Don't try to like create this kind of like bigger codes and debuggers. This won't help you in long run because in some competitions, you like if you are participating in ICPC or some other competition, you will not have like bigger codes. Like you will not be able to type these things, right? These sometimes we use to debug print codes, but it's not. It will not going. It is not going to be very helpful in competitions. On online, yes, sometimes. So I think this is all about debugging using random test case generator. Apart from that, the rest of the debugging skills is like that you will pick up with practice only. That once you make that bug and you debug it, you will remember it. Okay, this is something that I'm making, and you should be careful from the next time. So that's how most of the debugging skills pick up. So the more bug you create, so the main problem a lot of people face is like most of the people start coding or uh, like when in colleges what happens is the people start coding in, let's say for CDC, in just maybe 1 or 2 months before, and then what happens is the time it takes to build this coding and debugging aptitude is not like just 1 or 2 months, right? And that's not the way you should ideally be doing it, and it will not develop to that extent of course by the time of CDC. So you should ideally be preparing for these things quite long ago. Okay. And as you give time to these things, this will improve definitely. Like you will be able to code and debug things on your own as well. Like as even we have also built it with practice only. There is no other way to, no other shortcut to that. But knowing these techniques of how to like generate random test cases and check on which case it's failing is really helpful. So from now on, like whenever you get a like some problem on some code, try to like if it's not a very complex code, like where you have to like input a lot of inputs, try to write a simple like generator. I think even this code works for most of the things. You will have to write like a n square logic over here and some order n logic over here, and like check whether it's giving the same answer for most of the things. If you get a test case where it's failing, then good, you have already got a case where you can like now work manually and figure out where it's getting wrong. So it might either help you to get the test case where your code is failing or your logic is failing. Even like at sometimes you might be stuck with a logic which is wrong. So like how much, no matter how much progress you make on the code side, you are never going to get it AC, right? So make sure you put in a habit, and this changes hardly takes like if you do it properly, it will hardly take you more than 15 minutes, right? So even in a contest, if you're struggling with code, you can just write such brute forces. Even in competition, we have used this in ICPC to like debug our own code. So you can use these codes if you want to, like in competition as well. Like it hardly takes 15 minutes to write all of these, right? So rather than struggling for maybe half an hour on thinking of test cases where my logic is wrong, another thing, you can just quickly write and just find out the test case. That's it. Okay. So this is a lot about debugging. Anything else that you'd like to ask about this particular code? if you want to like keep a note of this, I already sent the file, right? Any other queries? So I think that's all on debugging part that I had thought about. So try to use these things when you get code, when you get bugs, because this will in one hand improve your like thinking process, because you will start looking at like things in a careful way. Like once you start seeing on which type of cases your code is failing, from the next time you will try to think about those type of edge cases, right? And your like kind of like your vocabulary of edge cases will increase. That's what I can say. Okay. So like in some cases, array where last element is the answer, array where first element is the answer, array is not sorted, array is sorted, array is all equal, something like that. These type of cases might fail, you might fail on. So like generating random test cases might help you look into these type of cases. And once you identify a test case in like after giving in a 15 minutes of effort, you will remember that for sure. Okay. So I think that's all on debugging part of this session. So that's all that was planned for today's session.